Hi, and welcome to AI for UX. This is a space where UX researchers and product leaders stay current with AI innovations. So I'm John Whalen, and I'm the founder of Brilliant Experience, and we're a psychology-driven product innovation firm. And personally, I've struggled with keeping up with all the new AI tools for UX research, and I'm guessing I'm not alone, and that's why I started this. In each installment, we speak to one of the leaders of the latest AI enhanced research tools and try to dive deep into the inspiration for the tool and how it might benefit you and ultimately where a whole field is headed. So, a quick note, these videos are not product endorsements. Brilliant pays full price for every technology we use, and no one's getting paid. It's just to learn more about it together. So, with that, let's get started. So I'd love to welcome Jonathan. So Jonathan Fairman is the VP of Product at dScout, a research platform that leverages AI to assist UX researchers in speeding up an analysis process by summarizing qualitative data, generating themes, offering key insights while keeping the researcher in control of deeper exploration and decision making. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with us.
It's a pleasure, and I appreciate what you're doing here for the space and helping people all understand this information.
Of course. Well, here with that, I know that people are often familiar with dScout, but some haven't really used it. So maybe we can dive in a little bit. So, just first of all, from your perspective, who is the target audience for dScout?
Yeah, I mean, dScout, we have a pretty wide array of users, but fundamentally, we see designers and UXR as our primary users. As an enterprise caliber product, we also have a lot of research ops people, right? Who needs all those team members that need to guide and nurture research teams at large organizations. And as expected, we have plenty of market research strategy teams using dScout too. Really, anyone with a deep curiosity for how their customers or potential customers engage with their products and services.
Yeah, and so I'm intimately familiar, having been a past subscriber. But just in general, what do you think the pain point is ultimately that your product addresses, and how do you help with that?
Sure. I love that question. I think for all of us in the research space, besides that failure is horribly expensive and that research helps validate and set companies off on the right foot, we look at, I think, a few things. One, timelines and bandwidth. No research team has ever said, "Oh yeah, we have plenty of time." So how do you kind of help teams work really agilely and efficiently? Our recruiting platform is world class and tightly integrated into dScout. So, we all know great research takes great participants. So we're able to kind of help you do that immediately. We've got a pretty rich suite of analysis tools, and as we're here today to talk in more detail about how
Hmm.
AI is starting to integrate into them. And I think lastly, the reality is that until you share those insights you've generated, until you have an audience and convincing
Hmm.
that audience, you've not really had impact yet. So we've got some helpful kind of storytelling tools to really further the impact that you have as a researcher, as like an insights provider.
Hmm. No, very true. And yes, I think we've used those a lot. So I actually was wondering how you'd describe a typical scenario when a UX researcher or a product team might be using dScout.
Yeah, a typical. I'm going to start broad for a moment
Sure.
and say that really, um, we dScout, our product is over 10 years old, so it's quite mature and has a lot of capabilities. And so we really kind of cover that whole spectrum from foundational, kind of deep longitudinal research that is kind of influencing strategy through generative work, whether it's kind of ideation and co-creation or like product discovery, all the way into that very kind of rapid, kind of at the speed of a sprint, evaluative research. So concept testing and usability. So it's a huge array that we can provide, but where we see I think, gosh, so it's almost hard to pick one.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if I should really get into one. Happy to, John. I'll
Okay.
let you. Yeah,
Yeah, well, you can think about it as we start to want to show things and just
yeah,
imagine a sort of scenario, and that's fine. And yes, it's
mhm,
true that honestly, we've used dScout for a lot of diary study things through generative research, through
yeah.
concept testing, and so on. So you're right that we had a lot of ways to use it in our quiver. Um, And I guess one other question I always try to pose of the folks who are building these tools is, there are other options relative to dScout. What do you feel makes dScout unique and maybe
Mm.
better than the other options?
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to start with our participant pool, or scouts as we call them here
Sure.
at dScout. Our scout pool is continues to be very well regarded and rated by our customer base. And as I believe I said earlier, really without great participants and immediate access to participants, you're not going to get uh, the kind of insights and content you need to really shape pieces. So I think kind of starting there. I think the second piece of dScout is, so once you've got that great participant, and in fact, whether it's from our pool or one of our tools to kind of manage your own participants or even your own complete panels, is actually just sort of how all of that research lifecycle is tightly integrated. So from recruiting to fielding to managing those participants in that research study to the analysis and sharing, it's all very streamlined and in platform. So I think that that really builds to the point on speed and integration and having your team not juggle six different tools that they need to really kind of make sense of the work and execute a high quality research program.
Yeah. Actually, you're reminding me. I think we had at the high point we had four folks doing research on the same project at the same time, and we had to juggle who was you know interviewing person X and Y, and we were able to pull it off in dScout. So I can tell you more. It wasn't perfect, but it was really good, and
Oh no.
it was better than any other configuration we could figure out. So
Well, even for a moment on that, I think it's really important to kind of put out there that like I think great product people we are optimistic and excited about what we build, but we are also our most important critics. And then I think in our space, in the research product space, we're so fortunate that our end users
right,
are experts at picking apart a product experience, and so it's a real value. So I no I
yeah.
I'm the first person to have critical feedback on dScout, but it's
Right. Well,
yeah,
for
also
better
very
or for
proud of it.
worse, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, and since this series is called AI for UX, maybe you can explain. I mean, you are a mature product and been around for many years, and so how is AI now integrated into your tool?
Yeah. So, and maybe we might ebb and flow out of kind of dScout
Of course.
whole and kind of AI story, but to kind of say, um, about a year ago, we got very serious and very deep into kind of exploring and implementing AI into the product. And today it sits predominantly within our analysis capabilities. They're really trying to break that trade-off between speed and quality. But fundamentally, we actually arrived there because we started with research. We reached out to a huge host of our users to understand where they had, confidence in the tech to support them, where they trusted dScout to support them, and with delightful laser sharp clarity, everybody started with analysis. Really felt that that was the place to start. So that is kind of where we've started, and certainly what I'll be showing a bit of today. Um, but I think also maybe if I could, John, touch on a second a little
Mm,
bit also how we
sure.
think about the kind of the principles and how we develop AI. Because I think the reality is this is very LLMs today and their power. It's so very nascent. Yes, I feel like as a kid I can go back to Big Blue, where I think the reality of this earlier versions of AI technology and such have been around. But the reality is, I think week by week, I feel like there are new opportunities and new considerations that are
Yeah.
on the table because of this new technology. And so we kind of think about it. We have kind of three general principles that we keep top of mind. And kind of the first is really about support and enhance, and thinking about how do we help our end user do what they do best more effectively. So it's a little bit less replace and a lot more support, and let you bring your deep domain expertise to the work you do more efficiently and with even kind of greater precision. I think the next piece of that principle also becomes like transparency and control. I think again, while I think in 5 years we're not going to see little sparkle AI icons everywhere, and we'll talk quite a bit less about how AI has been added to a thing, and it will become much more integrated and normal. But until we cross that chasm, we feel it's very important to make sure our end users are acutely aware of when AI is being used, whether that's through design language to call that out, but also give control, whether you want to hide that, whether you want to wait to run the analysis because you want to do your own quick pass so that you can really validate quality. So this is another big piece of how we think about it. And I think the last one, which is not new to our industry, is safety and security. And that is as much about how it influences participants and the risk of harm and AI moderation and some of these things to all new pipelines. And we have the most influential organizations in the world doing really serious strategic research here at dScout with our platform. And we want to make sure that we're providing an incredibly secure pipeline for all that to happen. But I think just even one thing kind of culturally
Yeah,
above some of those principles,
sure.
and maybe this is because we've got Midwestern roots, but something we really feel is important is to resist the urge to rush. Now the product team here at dScout, everyone is like, what do you mean? Like everyone is rushing. There's a lot of sweat and a lot of gray hair going into the thinking and the work. But we want to be really sensitive to not just apply the technology because we can, and really make sure we're meeting a need and meeting that need with quality. I think it's really easy to get kind of ahead of your skis, and we want to make sure we're cautious about kind of how fast we move for some of our.
Okay, very fair, and it's a very reasoned approach. And well, if I haven't, so let me actually turn the conversation a little bit. So if so I know how it would work with or I think I know how it would work with dScout, but how should people who have never tried it think about working with a tool like yours? And so essentially, how would they do their work differently because they've got these new opportunities with your tool?
Yeah. So maybe to say kind of first, so let's say you're doing, evaluative research and you want to understand, you want to do some concept testing. dScout being, a remote tool, very qual oriented, right? It lets you kind of very quickly design your study, maybe get your concepts or your prototypes integrated, and then put it out to 20, 30, 50 participants, however many you feel best supports your methodology. But then what happens is you get this, you're so delighted, you got something out quickly, but now there's this big overwhelm moment. It's like, oh, you need to start assessing 50 responses. In fact, in every kind of participant that gives a response, there could be a handful of video responses and screen records, as well as close-ended questions. So the reality is you very rapidly generate a huge sum of content.
Yeah.
And that can really, it's like, we asked for it. I wanted all that data. I want that insight, but that causes an overwhelm moment. And so we are using AI right now to help give you a starting point. And I think, it's the conversation has been going around for a long time with democratization and research. And, we have as many designers nowadays, I think, as UXRs in the platform. And while they don't have that deep keel and the time to dedicate to research that a researcher does. So we're also finding ways to let these tools kind of support people who more acutely maybe need that jumping off point, and others who might want to have a little more oversight and control over some of that
No,
analysis output.
yeah, it's an interesting change in our world, and I feel like there can be a vantage point of us UX research as the like gatekeepers or guardians of data, and we don't want to share. And so I do think that wall is just falling, whether folks want it to or not. And I think the reverse, I'd love for people to understand what's out there so that they're making informed decisions. And so it is I guess with these new tools, also it makes it easier to ask a question of a sea of data. And so it is interesting to learn also, you had mentioned a little of trusting it or actually trying and looking at the analysis first yourself before asking for any sort of summary or any sort of AI tool support. And it is an interesting evolution where we have to understand the strengths and weaknesses of these tools and know how it can support us and it's not stealing our job, but also when maybe to be less trustful and when to be more and really count on it. And it's an interesting sort of subliminal learning we are all going through right now.
Yeah.
Well, related to that actually is, I guess I recently went to one of the Insights conferences, and I've got a question here just about the notion of like hallucinations or bias. And actually, I think in every talk that mentioned any sort of tool that had any AI component, they asked, is my data training some model somewhere so Pepsi will get Coke's secret data or the reverse? Maybe you could just touch on a little bit of things like hallucinations or how data is walled and so on.
Yeah, I think it's a really great topic actually, and I think and really important to the work again, particularly in our space. Um, so maybe I'll touch on the security piece for a second. So at dScout we have a zero retention pipeline. We have a very sophisticated array of kind of checks and balances where any of the research content, so your Acme anvils, right, and you are doing research and you don't want someone else to have any kind of value based on the research you're doing and all these things. And so all of our data is, by account, sequestered. So it is not, we have a zero retention, private instance of OpenAI. So they're maintaining zero of that content. And then even, of course, in between any of accounts, we have very serious protections to keep all of that
Mm-hmm.
information separate. And I think what is interesting is, even in some of our early research, you talk to people, it's like, well, we don't have an AI tool, so I was just doing this in my private instance of ChatGPT. And when someone is doing that, that is very much
Yeah.
breaking any security protocol and really, really, I think, risky and kind of haphazard behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but um, I also think, frankly, it's important for people to get their hands on the tech and try it out,
Yeah.
just not with proprietary information.
Well, actually,
Please.
really quick. I'm sorry to interrupt midway, but it's specific to that. The understanding I have is that if you're accessing the API to something like OpenAI, and you're a business client, that then you have a walled garden with them. But without that, like a personal account or something else,
Oh,
that's
correct.
not necessarily true, is it?
Yeah, that's
I'm not
very
an
correct. And there
expert.
might be
Okay.
some more subtleties and some more options. But yeah, if you're just logging in with your personal Google account and I mean, you could even be paying the $21 a month or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the same as a zero retention relationship with
Got it.
any of these LLM
And I'm
providers.
sorry,
Yeah.
please continue. I just wanted to
Yeah.
hit that while you were on that point.
Well, no, I wanted to come into hallucination and then
Mm.
I'll finish with bias. And I'll say, so at my heart, I'm a product person. I love making product. That's my background. I have worn a research hat for phases of my career. Um, but when it comes to hallucinations, uh, uh, the kind of normal stuff we're looking for, context becomes very important. So how are we arranging the context that we're feeding to the LLM? To make sure the content coming back and through our pipeline is
Hmm.
not hallucinatory. I'm not sure that's the proper way to say that. But the reality is we work really hard through our prompt engineering, through our pipeline design, to check for that and have the checks and balances that don't guarantee, but with a very, very high degree of confidence, remove risk of hallucination. However, even in this journey of building this product, we have found all kinds of funny little versions of hallucination. The one that caught us off guard the most was, um, our pipeline asked for, 8 to 12 bullets. But we all know that LLMs would rather be in the spotlight as opposed to be a earnest and quiet assistant. And sometimes they'll give you 1,000 bullets. It only happened to us once, but it crashed our front end. It was this hilarious, like part of the journey of learning how to work with this technology was a whole new type of hallucination risk um, that we really didn't expect. And then to touch on bias, I think maybe three main thoughts. The first is when we're using these general knowledge LLMs, it would be foolhardy for me to say there's no bias in these. And I don't want to sort of debate that, but just to note that we do understand as an organization that um, when you ask for it to create an image of an engineer, it's very likely going to give you an old white guy. Um, So, we are cognizant of that, and a lot of that is also through our pipeline, kind of checking for that. Um, but I think the other interesting points are that there's a lot of bias in our system even before we inject LLMs, as researcher bias and these things. I know professional
Hmm.
researchers are
Sure.
super cognizant of it, but it doesn't mean they're not. And as democratization expands who is getting their
Hmm.
hands on the responsibility to do research, those many of those people have notably less training, and so we have lots of these risks, and that's why I think like we work really hard, and I hope I don't slip up today. I try very hard not to say the word insight. We're not giving you an insight with our work. We're giving you starting points. We're giving you things that can save you time and let you work at scale. Um, but it's important that I do believe, particularly where this technology is today, a human needs to be in the loop. And then I think the last thing, in the spirit of bias that's come up, is actually this refreshing twist of researchers saying they're really appreciative that this technology is looking across all the content. So I come back to that overwhelm moment,
Hmm.
right? You
Yeah.
might be doing a diary study and you have 500 entries
Yeah.
all of a sudden. And now, like, they each have a 2-minute video and open ends and close ends. Like, it's how do you go through all that? And the reality is, often researchers don't go through all of it. They go through a lot of it and they can filter down and find the right things. But with the way we've built our tech, is that we are vectorizing and looking across all of that content. And so when you see the little summaries and you
Hmm.
see the little themes we're providing, that is actually a holistic point of view, and is in some sense helping kind of take advantage of an LLM to maybe reduce some forms of bias.
Interesting. Very thoughtful and nuanced approach. Thank you. It's funny you actually a couple times you've triggered me like, oh yeah, that one. I remember doing a study not that long ago where we were doing weekly, and we had 150 folks doing 5 diary entries a day for a week. And so you can just do that multiplication, and that was a lot of data. And so, really before significant things like ChatGPT being available, or context windows that are big enough in AI nerd terms, we had to rely on machine learning to help us because it was just, yeah, the overwhelm was there. Either that or you're searching for specific things.
Yeah.
Um, so it is interesting how this might open up new ways to represent the content. So maybe that's a good segue. Not necessarily you've got that specific tool built in, but I know we've sort of danced around what is capable in dScout, and I think we should really maybe show and tell a little bit. So um,
Yeah, one
let me see if I can set this up so you can share your screen, and maybe while I'm doing that, you can just sort of introduce, here's the kind of scenario that I'm thinking of that we'll walk through today.
Sure, sure. So I'm going to show a couple of different um, missions that are kind of represented in a dScout of a. We did the real study, but it was an internal for demo purposes of having a researcher who wants to understand kind of streaming music platform kind of preferences and ideas, and sort of a hits, misses, and wishes project. This project uh, took advantage of our whole suite of kind of screening and recruiting tools, and usability tests and media surveys and longitudinal diary, and of course even live interviews. As a great research is often kind of mixed methodology, so we'll kind of see a couple of bits and pieces of that. And let
Great.
me just to maybe set the stage of just even what you're seeing, because I'm not going to give. I could spend an hour giving a detailed dScout demo, but what you're seeing here today is actually this is just a project page. So every research study, you would create a project page, and here's where you can kind of create, again, whether you need to do screening or any one of our unmoderated or moderated studies, you would create that. So you can kind of even see here. I'm actually going to start with um, feature creature, pardon me, to jump in. And this was a mission that was set out to just help understand what are some kind of again, kind of the hits, misses, and wishes. What are some features that were really helpful or not? Pardon me, what are some things that we're missing? And so I think there were 20 participants in this, and you can kind of see they're answering close-ended and open-ended, and a whole slew of questions. We've got, of course, here this video one I'll dig into. We can see all the videos and their transcripts. But even in this case, back to that jumping off point. So we provide our AI tool here is actually the first thing it really provides is an AI summary. So again, this is like a zoomed out 10,000 foot view of what was really said in all of these video recordings. So we're, analyzing the transcript to just get a high level view. And this is that first moment where, okay, where do I start? What are people saying? This is what that AI summary can provide in this moment. Um, and this is again, it's the jumping off point. It's to help you center where you want to start thinking. Maybe you're looking to see if some of your hypotheses came out in those responses. But then the next piece, kind of the second half of our AI offering here is AI themes. And these are themes that are derived from a fairly sophisticated pipeline that is assessing not just those responses or those video transcripts, but it's also looking at question structure, question intent, right? Are you doing like hard segmentation in your question? Were you asking people to list out things they prefer? All of these different kind of prompts and research
Hmm.
needs get influence how that pipeline works. And maybe to joke for a moment, but I think it is a real one. There's the classic overstuffed burrito that some researchers are guilty of, where it's like, I actually asked 6 questions, maybe just 3 questions in one prompt. In an unmoderated research, where that's something that is harder to flesh out. If you're moderating it, if you're in person, you can pile on those questions and ask those follow-ups. But here, our pipeline is even designed to assess and create multiple themeless if need be. So
Hmm.
if that summary, that AI summary of that question is the kind of high level view, we then have the AI themes that help you go deeper. And so here, even in this case, say collaborative playlist editing. If I want to look at everyone that was talking about that theme, I can use that, and then I can kind of scroll down, and I can see all of the videos where collaborative playlist editing was mentioned. I can see that through these tags. But also in the spirit of trust, I think really important here is, I'm hovered over here, is that you can see the language that was part of the assessment of generating that theme, collaborative playlist editing. And here, Dariush is talking about sending things to friends and letting them, kind of update things. So this is that second piece of that zoomed in more detail. So
Yeah.
you may have started with the quick read. Okay, what are people saying for all of our summaries and all of our open-ended questions? And then once you've kind of gotten your bearings, you can then very quickly you essentially have these themes that are generated for you
Jo-
to dive in.
Jonathan, just a quick question on this. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. So I guess I've got two since I'm a burrito question asker apparently. One was about if someone said they're got a past music musician and they're really into music, and other people are like, oh, I'm just a casual listener, and I wanted to see the difference between those segments of my 20 interviews. I wondered if that sort of thing was possible. And the other thing I guess I was going to ask was, this is what the AI has believed is most appropriate. If you were to say, oh, actually, these two categories are really one bigger category in my mind, or I'd like to add another quote, or take this one out because it's not appropriate. I just didn't know if there's that sort of like, I don't know, editing of what the AI has
Yes.
produced thus far.
No.
So,
And actually, I think, John, you touched on a really important point. And so to the first question, yes, you can kind of use filters and they apply to the themeless. And the next, actually, even here, for example, um, let's say you don't like the title collaborative playlist editing, and you just want to make that playlist sharing and editing. Maybe a bad example, but the idea that you need unique language to describe these, or right? The theme is bad, and you want to completely delete the theme because it's maybe unimportant or inaccurate. That will happen on occasion. So giving you kind of control like that is definitely in the platform. Um, Gosh, this is almost funny because maybe by the time this is out, we will have the ability to delete and clean up themes as they're applied, and then to add themes if you felt profile sharing should have been added, like this is also kind of roadmap work we're doing. And then in the near term, no, but in the midterm, yes. You're exactly right. Theme merging,
Mm-hmm.
I think, does become is something that's important and helps you go from that jumping off point, as I think you used like that
Mm-hmm.
sea of data, to now saying, cool, I have validated this. I'm the research expert on this. I'm going to help these designers who are maybe coming in, and I've cleaned this up a bit. I can let them know not
Yeah.
only are the themes where they have a great starting point, but they are locked in and you can use them with, great confidence. Um, that is very much in our thinking and in the product, and in the product roadmap.
Cool. Well, here, let me let you continue. I don't mean to drive you too sideways here, but please,
Yeah,
were there
well,
other things you wanted to mention?
I did actually just really quickly just want to also show you. So this is this is an example of one of our unmoderated capabilities and how you see the AI analysis coming in there as sort of this time-saving tool. We've also got, of course, our live product, which is our moderated research tool. And to maybe set the stage here, even again, to say kind of what we're looking at, this is the researcher point of view. This is post-interview, right? If you think of live as like, if Zoom is a video conferencing tool, Live is a video research tool. So it's got all the capabilities for kind of people to be observing and watching quietly and making clips and comments as that interview is happening and communicating with the moderators. But in this case, we are now kind of post-interview and we're looking at that. And again, as somebody who's moderated and analyzed a lot of interviews, it's sort of at this moment where we already, without the AI, have a lot of tools that help. And you can see, Blue is screen sharing moments and all these things, and you can make video clips of small sections to share. But we just know like how exhausting it is to go through, a 1 hour transcript and start understanding what's in there. So we've also got for each interview an AI summary. And John, you actually gave a great use case. One of the classics is that you've got 4 people moderating these interviews because moderated research is so time consuming. You need a team to
Mm-hmm.
divide and conquer. And now you can very quickly scan your colleagues' interviews just to see kind of what was covered. Did they see something that I was looking for that I haven't seen yet? So you have in those collaborative moments, the AI summary is very valuable. And then the flip side of that is that when you don't have colleagues that you get to collaborate with and kind of distribute the load, for anyone that's tried to do like 6 interviews in one day, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure many of you watching have, it's the promise of you do not, with great clarity, remember, was that in the second interview or the third interview? And then you come back to it 3 days later because now you're done with all 15 interviews. And the summaries become a really nice kind of re-engagement point to understand, okay, that's right. I really wanted to get into Carolyn's session because she loves this radio feature in Spotify. And I know that here because I've got that quick piece. So those are kind of the common use cases for the AI summary in our live product. But of course, a little bit different than our unmoderated tools because the methodologies are quite a bit different.
Mm-hmm. Nice. It's funny. I was going to encourage you as a cognitive scientist, and just from my own personal thing, I'm always shocked actually at like, an interview from 2014. If I can see the face or the one frame of the video, I'm like, oh yeah, Carolyn, I remember her cat was meowing in the background and this was her living room. And, you start to really remember a lot of the data. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we can be pretty good at that. And I agree, when you've got 90 interviews, you've got to be pretty careful.
Yeah. Oh,
But
and I love that you make that point because like recall and memory of these things, again, back to research efficacy and making sure the quality is there.
mhm.
You really want to make sure you're remembering that accurately.
Okay, very nice. Is Are there other things you wanted to mention?
In the space of sort of what is available today in the product,
Hmm.
that is the heart of it for sure.
Hmm.
So from a demo standpoint, I'm not sure there's much more to show from
Right.
generally available
That's
product.
fine. Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, and I appreciate your team's what thoughtful, patient approach to this. And so there are some groups you could see, other interviews on YouTube where they're like, yes, we have all the insights, and they say their insights, and here they are. So don't need you, John. We're good. And it's interesting, it's a very different perspective. And so, granted, you shouldn't use me when you don't need to, but or I should do the things that would maximize my performance. But at the same time, it's interesting to hear the different vantage points from different teams.
Yeah. Well,
So, you please go ahead.
I was going to say that I think I mentioned it kind of earlier. I think this technology is really amazing, and I am an optimist by nature. I'm also a skeptic by nature, but I think having a human in the loop, helping set context, having somebody with deep domain knowledge, particularly when you're getting into that analysis and
Mm,
synthesis. And our point of view here is how can we help them really do that at scale? Because back to the sort of joke, no researcher has ever said they've got plenty of time.
right. Um, Fair. Well, I guess one last question for you related to the sort of AI technology possibilities, and I might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but the one example you gave was, yeah, I might have had, over the last 2 years, 300 interviews we've done over 7 projects. Is it possible now to, in some way, query those with your AI across projects and not just within?
So today, no, but you are like uncovering the roadmap.
Okay.
You're undoubtedly, and maybe even to speak a touch to sort of where that's moving with this. So, what I shared was particularly in our unmoderated tools. We get each unique question level analysis, or so we have our summaries, we have our themes. Um, but really fleshing out that entire compendium of question types. We have a huge array of question types you can insert into your research. And so what does that mean to have tabular questions? What does it mean to have photo questions and start to introduce computer vision? And of
Mm,
course, really excitingly, over the last year, we've gone all in on evaluative research. And so what does it mean to have the combination of kind of computer vision and understanding what people are saying and doing task level analysis? So there's a lot of exciting work that we have that we are, again, kind of that resisting the urge to
yep.
rush, using for our own research. We're using with select customers and pilots, but we want to make sure we really have that nailed. But what you said actually is really exciting because you talked about like when you want to query, like you've almost got a repository, right? You do a lot of
Mm,
research in
yeah.
dScout, and
Oh,
now all of
yeah.
a sudden, yeah, I've got 300 interviews. I have I have 10,000, entries about health and wellness moments or financial,
Yep.
literacy moments, or, across projects and years. And so we're working on like basically a research assistant. So I think in your mind's eye, think kind of an LLM chat interface as the starting point for being able to query your research. Because fundamentally, not just looking across and having that kind of compendium of research and context to look for information that kind of furthers your research question. But fundamentally, great research yields more questions. And so the ability to like now, gosh, I did this research. I asked all my participants these questions, and now I want to go deeper and I want to ask more questions. And I want to understand of these 5 big themes, what does it really feel like for an end user to purchase something that's on the edge of their financial comfort zone, and bring these things to the surface and look across the
Hmm.
research in a really powerful way where again, back to putting you in control as the researcher or the person doing research, um, giving you the sources and kind of showing you that content. So I think that is very much in our roadmap. Actually, we had a company event just a week or so ago and had a chance to share some of that with the audience. So really excited about that. And I think you're thinking exactly right. What is the next extension
Hmm.
in this analysis field? Um, but I will say this, if I may, just
Sure.
maybe one last piece, just since I'm on kind of
Yeah,
where
of
this is
course.
going, where we think this should go. Of course, I've just talked ad nauseum about analysis, but this technology can be really effective, I think, in many other phases, from helping you draft uh, questions or being more efficient with your question asking, um, or maybe even scout management moments and automation to send quick little messages. But another place that I am really intrigued by, and we've been doing a lot of experimentation in, is actually in the fielding, particularly of unmoderated research. And in the world of like evaluative research, right, you've got a participant using an interface, a prototype. Maybe you've asked them to go to their favorite travel site, whatever that is that they're kind of working with. We're able to analyze not just what they're saying in the voiceover,
Hmm.
but what is actually on the screen, and take that and start to inject those little precise follow-up questions. Oh, you seemed irritated when you couldn't delete the playlist. Tell me a little bit more about what you were expecting to be
Hmm.
able to do. So these are not earth-shattering questions. Any researcher worth their salt, if they're moderating, right, they just ask that, they got it. But when you're doing unmoderated, again, helping you
Yep.
scale your practice, we're really excited by the promise of that. And again, it's not full session moderation. It's these really sharp, targeted questions that, with the same amount of effort as an unmoderated study, give you the depth of a moderated study. So really
Well,
excited to see that comes to life.
yeah, and it's interesting. You can see some of our other interviews actually, where some of the groups that, and I'm going to ask you about sort of the foundation or start of creation of the product. That's a fair ways back, but some of the other groups, sort of started in last summer, and effectively. And so they do have interesting things with follow-on questions and the way, you can start to imagine. Um, Giving the tool context for here's my big goals, giving it, or maybe even here's the subject matter, giving it some sort of scale of how much I want you to go off the tracks of the interview and follow on. And so, or how many questions I'd
Almost,
like you to do. And
almost,
so
almost a temperature setting, if you
it
will.
is, yeah. So there are really interesting possibilities there. Well, let me just ask a little bit about sort of the foundations and maybe even just the start of your trek in AI work with your product. But sort of, I know you weren't there on day one, but you can tell me a little bit about the start of dScout and kind of what are some of the things that you've been doing recently that you're particularly proud of that you've gotten out, you've been able to share with your customers.
Yeah. Well, first, to warn you, economy of phrase is not my strong suit. I'm going to go really far back as quickly as I can.
Okay.
So I joined dScout a bit over 9 years ago. And at that point, we were really on the vanguard of revamping diary studies. 20 years ago, at the beginning of my career, I used to do diary studies by sending someone a wind-up camera, a custom-made journal, and a return envelope. And so it was really exciting for me to have this moment
Yeah.
as a product person building product to now revamp and reimagine a methodology. And it
Hmm.
was the smartphone and the notion that everybody had a camera in their pocket and a journal in their pocket. And that was a really exciting reason for me to join the dScout team when we were just a little I think just about 20-person company. Um, and now here we are on the vanguard of another big innovation. We in our kind of I'll call it modern lifetime, right? The internet, the smartphone, and now AI. And it's so exciting to see how this is one, yes, very much a disruptor, but also an incredible opportunity to inject kind of dScout's mission, right? Make a more human tomorrow, bring research into more
Right.
places more often in a way that doesn't have to sacrifice quality, if we do this right. For us, gosh, about a year and a half ago, it was real clear that if you were not going to invest in this and learn and experiment and explore
Yeah.
and ship some good product, that you were going to be a dinosaur. And so again, back to the team feels like we're rushing very much, but we're still trying to be sensitive to what we put in people's hands to make sure that we're embracing the best of what this technology can do in a way that's very responsible still.
Interesting. And uh, yeah, to give you a sense, one of the reasons we started this, set of interviews was because there are sort of such an explosion of possibilities and different things that have been tried. And so um, even keeping up with what are the logical possibilities, let alone which is the best of amongst those, is a challenge that we're trying to work with. And actually, the other interesting thing is we've been asked more and more for helping people even sort of train their teams on how can I change our research ops, our way of thinking, our approach, and not just our immediate UX researchers, but that next level down of product folks or designers, and for that matter, now other groups want to do interviews in HR and use it, or so different applications of the same approach, I guess. So it's interesting to see how this is expanding. I've heard of folks interviewing uh, for potential acquisitions and understanding how much people like a product or not, and getting quick
Sure.
summaries of large sets of folks and their sort of insights, or their, I guess their what unmoderated and free form explanations of their opinions. And so it's
Yeah.
interesting to see. I sometimes find it hard to imagine what are all these possibilities and how will this evolve. But so
Yeah.
actually, let me ask you about that, because you have to keep building the product. You still have to have a roadmap. You have to have a vision of how people might work. So I have a question here about where do you see your product and how do you see our enterprise of research changing over the next few years? And I think that was too ambitious. Let me dial it back. But going forward, how do you see dScout evolving? And for folks like these UX researchers, or indeed the designers and PMs and so on, how do you see our work evolving in the next while?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question, and I touched a bit on dScout, so I'll be
Mm-hmm.
quick about that. But for us, still very much this big horizon of supporting in the analysis phase, and then I think as that arc kind of grows into what I kind of demoed today, which is very narrow context, to then moving into letting the researcher set the context and set the prompts and questions to give you more control. So that's kind of one big horizon for us. And then building on top of that, I think if we play kind of 2025 plus, that becomes methodological evolution and change. And I think ultimately introducing very new methodologies. So if we look at 2025, it's sort of what I've even talking about, like injecting custom prompts. Where can we do very quick kind of quasi AI moderation moments? I think it becomes very natural extension of kind of this learning. Um, but I think from the industry as a whole, uh, I think this can feel very threatening. LLMs are great at chatting, and research, kind of at its simplest and at its core, is about having a conversation and learning. Uh, and so I think one, it's very natural to feel a little threatened by this. But I'm gonna do a really clumsy job of quoting Dr. Ricardo Prada. He is a Google DeepMind UX leader, and he had a really nice flip to this situation, which was basically um, there's so much unknown here. John, here, you and I are like, gosh, can we even talk further out than a year? That's how
Right.
unknown this is. That
Mm-hmm.
what this actually is a wonderful opportunity to do more research and learn and have research really help drive clarity of where this technology can provide value in end users, how they want to shape the industry. I think it's a really dynamic moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I see that, and Dr. Prada sees that as a chance for researchers to actually do even more now than ever. And hopefully, as the research industry shoulders all that new obligation, along the way, we're building tools here to help you do that, more efficiently.
Well, and I was meeting some folks at an association meeting recently, and um, I think I hope I lit a little light bulb in their mind that, oh, so if we could turn around this research really fast, then what can I ask next? Like, it's not that I'm going to do 5 studies over the course of the year. It's that we can do this, and now we can think of it globally, and then we can do a follow on. So I mean, a representative example I think I did in the earlier days of dScout is doing a diary study, finding the people that were most intriguing, and then interviewing them as well to dive deeper. But logically, you had a scenario where someone said, yeah, I've done this, and now that I know that, I have this follow-on question. And essentially, you can kind of keep whacking away at these sequential questions much faster or with much more depth than ever before. So it's almost riches of things for us UX researchers to do potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Even in our first foray of the AI tech, we hear time and time again, oh, this is saving me many hours.
Hmm.
Oh, I save 4 hours because I could dive into these 6 open ends much, much quicker. It's like, oh my gosh, a free half day.
And
Oh,
those themes I meant to say that our earlier career researchers who are doing some of the tagging and just segmenting of here's an interesting quote on this topic, having this give that a first pass, to see the joy in her eyes that this will happen, and then right, she can use more of her firepower to think about the strategy or the meaning of these statements or where we should go next with our research rather than being busy finding them. So I think that your mission of letting us do our deeper research or more valuable efforts and taking away those things that are feel more like drudgery are maybe really important. So cool. Well, thank you so much. I think this is a really interesting conversation. Is there anything I missed that you wanted to mention?
gosh, I don't think so.
Okay.
But
Well,
I also really enjoyed this. I appreciate it.
can I ask if I'm someone that hasn't used dScout and I want to give it a try? Can you just tell us? Do you go to your website? Do you talk to us? How should that person approach that?
I would say head to the website to connect with a salesperson. We have, I almost shudder to call them sales. We have an incredible partnership culture from both our sales side of our organization as our customer support side. And so through our website is a great way to reach them. And you can kind of pour through the product with them and get your hands on it.
Very nice. Well, again, thank you for your thoughtfulness and interesting measured approach to AI. And no, I wish dScout all the best. We've been fans for a long time. So with that, let me just close this out. So thank you again, Jonathan, for sharing dScout with us. And that's all for today. So again, thank you for tuning in and keeping up with the latest on AI for UX research and product research. If you enjoyed this, tell us what else you'd like to have us feature next, and feel free to ask questions about the video, and I think both of us could respond. And so wishing you brilliant insights with AI.